Welcome to the Retirement Roadmap by SHP Financial, a podcast empowering today's retirees and pre-retirees to make well-informed financial decisions that will help you spend more time living and dreaming than worrying and wondering. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Welcome everyone to another edition of SHP Financial's Retirement Roadmap podcast. I'll be your host today, Matthew Peck, and I'm joined with my fellow business partner, Keith Ellis, who we're still working 21 years away. And I guess we're slowly getting better.
Yeah, slowly getting better, refining, continuing to build, plans and look at help people do what they want to do when they're done with their working years, and that's called retire.
Well, and it's so much fun too, because sometimes I'll ask people, they'll say, okay, what does make SHP different and whatnot, and sometimes I do talk about experience, in the sense that we've been here now for over 20 years, and going through the 2008 and then COVID and this current inflationary time and all of those, all the different administrations. Obviously, I'm sure you get questions about politics a lot as well.
Every 4 years.
Yeah, to be precise. And I think in that time too, Keith, we get I think that there are certain common questions that we get. Sometimes it's more on a technical question, such as what is a required minimum distribution, or what is a Roth conversion, when it comes to our tax planning side of it. But I think at the very top, or one of the more common questions that we get a lot that I really wanted to dig into today is, how much do I need to retire? I think we get that question a lot, where clients come in and say, okay, I have this amount of money saved or that amount of money saved. Do I have enough to retire? What is that magic number? And so what I wanted to do over the next 30, 35 minutes, depending on how long I have your expert expert knowledge with us, but really dig into that, because I think it's a different number for different people, but it's not just a financial number. I mean, I think there's emotional numbers with that, or sort of, some people are comfortable, in retirement, and some people are not. Or some people take some time to get comfortable, and other people are, once they retire, they never look back. And again, getting people over that hump to say, hey, do I have enough? What is that magic number? And I think at the same time too, we can also spend some time talking about how SHP helps identify that number for each individual client that walks in. Whether it's here in Plymouth or Woburn, Hyannis, or some of our satellite offices. So kind of, using the time to really dig into that question, I think would be great. So Keith, how often do you get asked that question of, how much do I need to retire? And where do you start? How do you start to break that down for a client?
Yeah, I mean, every person that comes in the door, that's kind of the big question that they're asking is, I've been working 20, 25, 30, 35 years. I've saved X number of dollars. Is this enough for me to be able to stop working and retire? And like you said, it is both a financial but also an emotional decision, right? So I always start with the fact that you need to have a plan when you set out into retirement. You can't wing it. You can't just go into retirement saying, hey, I have a 401k, I have a 403b, I have a couple other accounts, whatever it is, and I'm just going to start taking distributions from whatever account, haphazardly, for lack of a better way of putting it. You need to have a plan, and I think that's really the first step. I mean, we go on vacations and things like that with our families. What's the first thing that we do? We plan those vacations, right? And that's 2 weeks of our lives, or 10 days of our lives, or 7 days of our lives. Now we're talking about 15, 20, 25, 30 years of our lives. And there's so many people that step out into retirement, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait. I need to actually, you're right, I actually do need a plan. So they come in and visit with us or other advisors around to put together that plan. And I think the first thing you need to do is identify what you want your retirement to look like. That's a lot of the questions that we ask up front. It's not necessarily, hey, how much money do you have? How much have you saved? It's really painting the picture of what we want the next 10, 20, 30 years of your life to look at. Because that's going to come back to determine what your spending is going to look like. Because I've had folks that have saved $300,000-$400,000, and they're going to be perfect through retirement because they don't live a very extravagant life, and that's the life that they want to live, right? Then I have people that, have millions and millions and millions of dollars saved, and they're still continuing to work because they don't have enough to afford their lifestyle still. You know what I mean? So it really comes down to, what is your lifestyle going to look like in retirement, and starting to put together the B word. And no one likes to hear it, but it is important to have, and that's a budget. No one wants to live on a budget, but it really helps benchmark or start to put a plan in place as to spending. Now, one of the things that SHP does, in my opinion, and this is something we've really done, is say, okay, look, you have a budget, your spending, your household expenses, but we want to challenge our investors, or challenge the families we work with, to live a meaningful retirement. Like, you're not going to sit on your couch all day and watch TV in retirement. We want you to enjoy your retirement, really paint that picture, and help them paint that picture, like I said, of the next 20, 30 years of their life, to say, look, there's still meaning beyond work. We're going to transfer that effort into something else, whether it's grandchildren, family connection, vacation with friends, whatever it is, community service. Everyone has a different passion, and it's up to us as advisors to show them that path, but also bring that out of them. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No, and there were so many things that you spoke about there that I really kind of wanted to both underscore as well as sort of come back to and develop a little bit. The first part, you talk about winging it. I mean, that to me is so nervous, and so I couldn't even imagine someone retiring without a plan.
Right.
Maybe it's because that's what we do every day, is set people up on plans, and so or maybe it's just because
whenever we go on vacation, it's nice though, because my wife does the planning and I don't have to. So this is fantastic.
That's the thing. That's like you need an advisor.
Yes,
it could be a wife.
I need a vacation advisor.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
That's my wife.
You definitely need somebody that. But that's the point. You need someone to do that for you, because like literally, if you're making that massive change and that massive, you're walking into your boss's office and you're about to tell your boss, or if you're self-employed, that's great too, but you're about to tell your boss to say, look, I'm retiring, and making that change. It's like how you would do that without being stressful, without sweating buckets, versus going in there with the plan and being like, okay,
you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I ran all these numbers. I took a look at, okay, what if there's inflation, and what if there's a bear market? And if you crunched all those numbers, then you're going in with this almost supreme confidence to say, yes, I'm ready for this. I'm ready for retirement. I took a look. I did all my due diligence, right? And I'm not winging it. Where when other people, if you do that, and if you retire without a plan in place, God bless you, I just don't know how you do it, because that makes me nervous just thinking about it.
And I think you said it right. You hit the nail right on the head. Having a plan provides confidence. That's one of the things that I experience with the families that I work with, is you can see as we start to meet with them time and time again, and they start to step from the working years of their lives into the retirement years of retirement, you can see the confidence that they have as they start to see the plan that we've built them unfold. And they're like, wow, this is really working. You know what I mean? And I can actually spend what I want to spend and do what I want to do and enjoy the life that I want to enjoy. It's empowering. It provides confidence. And you can always, the great part about a plan is you can always go back and revisit that plan to then again, things start to creep in your mind. Hey, the market's down, or hey, so this is going on in my life, or hey, we're about to make a big move in our life, buy a second home, whatever it is. You can always go back to that plan, revisit that plan, rebuild that plan to again instill that confidence ongoing.
Well, that's what I was saying, and then that was the second point. I'm glad you went back to it. Is the fact that there are different stages to retirement. Now, we certainly want to make sure that people have a plan in place, and that, as you said, that we're constantly revisiting it. But I think everyone needs to understand when it comes to, okay, how much money do you need when you retire? Well, you're going to need different amounts at different stages, or something along the lines about, how they say they have like your go-go years in retirement, your slow-go years in retirement, and then your no-go years in retirement, right? And so understanding the fact that retirement itself is going to change. I mean, yes, we're going to have this to show you what it looks like over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years, but we're also in the back of the advisor's mind aware that there are going to be these stages, and there are going to be different expenses and budgets and needs, and, as mentioned, or also fun stuff that's going to happen, like maybe it is a second home,
Correct.
Along those same lines. So understanding that not only is it a plan, but it's constantly being revised and updated because you will be entering different stages in retirement. But let me also talk about the last thing that you mentioned too, which I think is by far one of the most powerful things, is that one of the keys to happiness, to overall happiness, is having purpose, right? Having a reason. And it's like, making a change and making a difference and making sure that there's something that drives you every day. And so obviously when you're working, it's relatively easy. I mean, your purpose is to make money and to save or to, work on your career or whatever that may be. But making sure that you think in that type of thought process in retirement. And I love how you said, like, look, we try to challenge our clients to bring that out in them because, we might be able to set you up a financial plan, but if you're not emotionally happy, then that part's going to be missing. So I did want to really talk about that. So now let me talk about more on brass tacks because you mentioned the budget aspect of it. Now, I would say that there are different ways for people. I mean, I guess, let me put it this way, Keith. I mean, certain clients come in and they have their spreadsheets and they have everything all itemized out, which is fantastic. And I think it's not necessarily a budget. It's more about, I'm trying to think of a better word for it, but it's almost like accounting. We just need to know how much it's going to cost.
Yes.
And so I guess as I said, some of our clients walk in and they have it all buttoned up to a T and they have every single expense. They've done all their homework, which is great. Now, a lot of people don't. They don't have that spreadsheet. They don't have that list of each individual expense. How do you help them figure out what the cost of their lifestyle would be?
Yeah, I usually take a look at their current income.
Okay.
And we start to really think, and maybe they go home, they say, hey, look, I really want to do this exercise. I want to go back in time and look at what we spent over the last, many times that's the case.
Right.
Because these people want to come up with a firm number or at least pretty darn close to a firm number of what they had been spending. But we say, okay, look, what is your current income? What are your current expenses that like maybe like a mortgage that could be falling off, or are you paying healthcare? All these different things, and you kind of come to a number in a meeting. I'll be honest with you. Most of my clients kind of target right around $100,000 a year net income. I don't know if that's true for you, but most people, that's kind of where they're comfortable, whether they're making $250,000 a year, $300,000 a year now, or whether they're kind of making $80,000 a year now. So a lot of times we're starting with a projection, not necessarily knowing it's exact. But as we start to work through the process, we really do want to hammer in and get a little bit more under the microscope of the exact. It's really hard to say, hey, look, you're going to be okay for the next 25, 30 years of your life unless we do have those numbers. You know what I mean? Yeah,
no, it's true. And I think that's also, and I think maybe that's where I go back to the stages and about how we constantly revise and update these numbers, because sometimes it's hard. I mean, sometimes it's hard to say, okay, well, this is my budget and my spending now while I'm working, but what's it going to be like when I'm retired? And what's it going to be like, is it during my go-go years? And I do love the idea of the planning of being able to be like, okay, how much itemization do we want to do? I mean, let's kind of have your living expenses. And then, and you've seen that in the spreadsheets in sort of the SHP portal, for any of our existing clients, and they know what this report looks like. But we're able to put together what's called a cash flow report. That's the fancy term. What we do like to call it more specifically is the income plan.
Yes.
Right? And so in that income plan, as you were saying, we're going to take a look at your income, take a look at just your Social Security and other forms of income, pension if you're so lucky, or have obviously paid into it. But then under the expenses tab, we people can set it up any way they want. So for example, sometimes for some clients, they'll have like your standard living expenses that will go on in perpetuity for the rest of your life. But then they'll kind of create a separate column for other expense flows. Now, that could be a new car every 5 to 7 years.
Yep. It
could be a vacation. Let's say, look, I'm going to travel like crazy from 62 until 72. as an example, right? Sometimes it all gets merged together. Sometimes people will separate their mortgages if they have it, because your mortgage will eventually fall off, unless you're doing a brand new 30-year mortgage as you enter retirement. And so that then, having that placeholder and then being able to obviously model it out, but we want to start somewhere. We want to get something like kind of pen to paper, so now we can start to track it. Were we right or were we wrong? I mean, how often, and I think you've had experiences like this where a client's like, oh, don't worry, Keith, I only spend, $10,000 a month. And then what happens in a year from then?
Hey, we need an extra 2, and it's like, wait a minute, let's revisit this. Let's make sure that fits. And that's the beauty of having that cash flow analysis. What I love about it, Matt, and I tell people, it's a living, breathing plan that updates every day. So as we meet with our clients and the families we work with ongoing, we're revisiting this plan to make sure we're on track. How do you know? And then if we're off track, we make adjustments. Or if we're, say, they're only spending X dollars and their portfolio is growing, it empowers them to spend more, give more, give to their kids more, their grandkids more, 529 plans, whatever it is. And we start to create different strategies off that. Or if we start to see the portfolio come down a little bit because they're spending too much, we might have to have that conversation of tightening. But how do you know? And you have to have it earlier and be on top of this stuff, because otherwise things get off track and it can create some really bad situations. That's why, again, having a plan is extremely important. I had a client walk in, a family that I've been working with, when they first came in about a year and a half ago. They were both 60 years old, wanted to retire at 62. And they were just starting out, but they actually came in with the spreadsheets, the budget. They needed, like I said, about $100,000 a year of net income in retirement. And they projected they were going to get about $70,000 a year from Social Security at full retirement age. That's the numbers that it stated. But they were maybe thinking about taking Social Security at 62 when they retired. Mm-hmm. So what we did is we built that cash flow analysis to say, okay, look, if you take Social Security at 62, here's what your portfolio is going to look like over the long run. And then what we're able to do is compare that to waiting to their full retirement age. What that did is it added an extra $400,000 in value to their portfolio.
Interesting.
By waiting. Now, obviously, there's a lot of unknowns there. Health, God forbid something happens to one of them. But, if you look at that and you dissect that information and you look at those two scenarios, I guess what I'll say is having a plan helps you make better decisions.
Absolutely. Better
decisions around when to take Social Security, better decisions maybe around having a pension or a lump sum, better decisions around healthcare. Okay, are we building in a separate expense for healthcare? What does that look like when it comes to our Medicare expenses? Do we need long-term care? Can we afford long-term care? Because a lot of people have had long-term care experiences. They want to account for that and have a plan set up for that. Is it affordable? Well, how do you know that? You know what I mean? So taxes, which we're going to get into here in a minute as well, because, when I was modeling this out for them, and them retiring at 62, we also had to show them, hey, and they were going to be fined plenty of money for the rest of their lives based upon the $1.5 million that they had saved. They could have retired right then at 60. Mm-hmm. How empowering is that, by the way? Someone comes in, meets, you build a plan for them, and you show them you're going to be fine if you retire at 60, 61, 62, whenever you want. You now control your future rather than, work life controlling your future. Talk about empowering people to live a better life, in my opinion, or a more stress-free life. Because if you're not stressed about work and you don't technically, quote unquote, have to go to work, now you want to go to work, that's a different experience altogether.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but no, it brings up one of my favorite stories I love telling about a client. I'll just call him Bob for now. But I remember the first time I met Bob. He came into the office. He was all stressed out. Hair all straggly and everything else along those lines. And he's like, "Matt, I gotta retire. Just like how do I retire?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, we went through the process. He's like, back to Bob. Bob's like, I want to retire as soon as possible. So we'll go through the process, which I'm going to come back to because I do want to talk about sort of like the the next step of the, about the net 100 grand or whatnot. But okay, back to Bob. Bob's all stressed out. Sit down with him a second, third, fourth time, develop a plan and say, hey, Bob, you can retire. You're good, man. You don't have to put up with this stress anymore. Life's too short, kind of all of those, kind of cliche, but true adages. And so I was like, all right, Bob, you're good to go. Go ahead and put your notice in. 6 months later, 9 months later, Bob comes in for a review. I'm like, okay, Bob, well, are you retired? What are you doing now? You golfing? You gardening?
Yeah.
What are you up to? He's like, oh, I didn't retire. I'm like, Bob, you first came in like stressed as, out of your mind.
I have many clients like that as well,
but now he's
which
like,
is fine.
And now Bob's like, well, now that I know I can retire,
Exactly.
Suddenly work is a lot less stressful. And it was just like the fact that we were able, like the plan that we were able to show him the light in the tunnel. Now he could keep on going through that tunnel all he wanted. He could get off the next day if he wanted. But he said about how empowering that was, and just that brought such relief to Bob, knowing that he could go at any point. He still wanted to work.
Yeah.
But he now knew that he could go at any point. He had a plan in place, and that alone was enough to put a smile on his face and get him up every Monday morning.
And to kind of circle back, it's such an empowering feeling for folks, that you can almost see the weight lifted off their shoulder as they're sitting across the table from you, and the happiness in their face to say, wow, all these years I've been kind of quote unquote doing the right thing, and it's paid off. And I know it's paid off because you've showed me it's paid off. And I don't have to keep doing what I'm doing. I want to, but I don't have to. So I always say, if your boss says something to you the wrong way, you could say, see you later. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like I said, it's an empowering feeling. But like, to circle back to that client I was speaking about earlier, okay, so now we know that they can retire at 60, 61, 62. They're going to be fine for the rest of their lives. Now it's up to us as advisors to look at this plan that we've built them in a holistic manner. And I think that's, our SHP retirement roadmap process. It's all about building a holistic plan. I always say, we've built the castle. Now we need to build the moat around it, right? Mm-hmm. What are some things that could penetrate the castle or kind of hurt your retirement? Okay. One of them is taxes.
Right.
So a lot of people have saved money in pre-tax assets, right? So you've saved it in IRAs. You've saved money in 401ks. You've saved money in 403bs because that's what we've all been told to do. Nothing right or wrong about that, but that's kind of where the majority of people sit. Well, as you retire, if the government were to sign into law new legislation which increased taxes, say 5, 10, 15%, well, now you're withdrawing that much more to meet that net number at the number that you need to live your life. You're depleting your assets, a lot quicker than you once expected. So it's our job as advisors each and every year to meet with the families we work with, most of the time 2, maybe 3 times a year along the way, to identify some of these issues that we see in the future and start to cure them now. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier was the idea of starting to transition money from IRAs to Roth IRAs. Take that tax target off the back of those assets. Now, you have to do it methodically over time because we don't want to jump through all these different tax brackets, increase healthcare costs, so on and so forth. But if you're not having those conversations with your advisor right now, you're doing yourself a disservice because it's kind of just coasting through retirement. That plan isn't as fine-tuned as it could be because eventually at some point taxes, in my opinion, have to go up with the way, at the rate that we're spending and, the national debt, so on and so forth. I mean, what is the low-hanging fruit? Mm-hmm. It's pre-tax assets. And how does the government get more? A simple stroke of a pen. It's that simple, in my opinion.
Well, and I think that's why it's so crucial to go back to the cash flow and the income plan. And now I'm gonna put you on the spot here in a second too. Is the fact that it has to be that $100,000 that we talk about that spending has to be net of taxes. And I think you kind of mentioned that earlier. I'm like, okay, I really wanted to emphasize that, is that when we are building out that income plan and how much do I need to retire and whatnot, we want to make sure that spending is sustainable both for taxes and inflation. So those two things it has to be, that $100,000 has to be net of taxes. Yeah. It has to be net of inflation, or at least adjusted for inflation through the next couple, through your retirement. And so, okay, so now people are going to ask the question. They're going to say, okay, what's the magic number? So let me take that scenario we're kind of painting. Client needs $100,000 of net income. Mm-hmm. They have $40,000 of combined Social Security, which means they have an income gap of $60,000 per year. To repeat, the client needs $60,000 per year net of taxes in order to live the lifestyle that they've dreamed. How much should that client have saved?
That's a great question. And the one thing I would say to that is, or the one thing I would ask them, is that $100,000 in this scenario you quote unquote getting by? Or are we building in these other expenses, like you said earlier, a new car every 5-7 years, healthcare costs? My guess is probably $1.5 to $2 million would probably get that done. I would want to run it through the cash flow analysis, but my guess is probably that's where we would target it, because you always want to build a buffer. You always want to have a buffer because things do come up. But to kind of circle back to what I was speaking about earlier is, one, it doesn't have to be $100,000 a year net. People have different. I have some clients that say, I'm going to be fine, and I'm going to be able to do everything I want to do $60,000 a year net. Like I said, I have other clients that say, look, I need $140,000 a year net. Everyone is different. That's to me, the I don't want to say the fun part, but the interesting part about this job is, or what we do, is everyone's situation is completely different. And it's fun to show them, and it's empowering to show them what their situation looks like on paper, and then building different scenarios. A lot of people have different concerns. Well, the good news is, okay, here's your plan. Let's address those concerns in different scenarios and see how your plan holds up, right?
Well, that's the thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Keith. I mean, but I love how you kind of put it, because, so here you are, I put you on the spot, you answer the question, which is great. Anywhere from $1 to $1.5 to $2 million. No, and I'm going to go back to that number because I want to sort of ask your opinion on an old rule of thumb for retirement. But I love how you just said, look, but wait a second, it's not necessarily the number that you've saved. It goes back to the budget. It goes back to how much you spend and how much of that lifestyle, the lifestyle that makes you the happiest, what is the true cost of that? So the answer is not how much do I need to save in retirement. It's how much do you spend in retirement?
Yeah. And that's what a
lot
of people
need to figure that out first.
Yeah, we always say a lot of people focus on the wrong number. I've had people come in here and say, hey, I need to save $2 million. And I'm like, okay, why? And then we start to look at their budget, and they could have retired 3 years ago.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? It's very interesting that people have a kind of that mindset where they're almost focusing on the wrong number, because there's two things you're never going to get back: health and time. That's, I've experienced it in my own life with, personal experience with my father is, you will never get back the ability to spend time with family, spend time with, your loved ones, spend time with your grandkids. And there's no guarantee that your health is going to hold up to the next day. So again, talk about going back to that empowerment, the empowerment to be able to step away from a job, a career, a business, and be able to retire the way that you want in a comfortable manner. The only way you're going to feel that is to have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think too, and to go back to the idea of, okay, $1 million to $2 million and why a plan is so important is because there was an original rule of thumb or old adage that was very popular when we were sort of first entering the field. And we still get a lot of questions about it too, which is what's called the 4% rule, right? Where it's like, okay, if you are withdrawing 4% or less of your assets on an annual basis, then history shows that you should be fine. And I think that's kind of how you came up with that idea of anywhere from $1 to $2 million if you are spending $60,000 per year, net of taxes, net of inflation. that falls right within the 4% withdrawal rule. Let me back up a little bit. I mean, do you talk about that much with clients? I mean, sometimes we get asked it. I'm just curious if your opinion on that in general and how much that plays a role in your planning.
Here's the problem. I mean, you said it, right? And it's should. Mm-hmm. Should be fine. I mean, plain, you should get there. Yeah, I'm like, no, that's not how I would want to retire. That's kind of not how I want. I want to know that I have you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to see it on paper. So whether you can afford to execute the 4% rule, which, is a lot harder today in the interest rate environment, maybe not now, but, over the past...
It was over the past 20s.
Yeah, past 20 years,
yeah.
It was really almost impossible to kind of go that methodology. And our interest rates going to stay as high as they are now? Probably not.
Well, and I think too, sorry to interrupt, I mean, it's just the whole idea of 4% is fine. Well, it's like, okay, interest rates move.
Exactly.
And if they're going up, okay, well, maybe that makes it a little bit more viable. But if they're going down, and if we enter another 2 decades of low interest rates like we saw during our working careers, then suddenly that 4% is under pressure.
So to answer your question, do people bring that up from time to time? Is it a methodology that we use? Not really. So we believe that you need money that's dedicated for safety, your emergency money, your bank, your rainy day fund, money that's dedicated for income, whether that's, interest, dividends, yield, annuity, whatever it is, the most efficient path to get you what you need. Because you said it earlier, people don't really worry about their spending while they're working. Why? Because they have income to support their lifestyle. Well, don't you want that in retirement?
Yeah, right.
That exact same thing. I mean, I call it mailbox money. Don't you want to know that, hey, no matter what's happening in Wall Street, Washington, D.C., or around the world, that check's coming to support your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Now, how we get there is different with every family that we work with, but it's about efficiencies. And then, once you have what I call their lifestyle protected, you have enough money in a rainy day fund, you have enough money to support the income for the next 10, 15, 20 years, accounting for inflation, accounting for taxes. The rest of the money is used to grow. Now, that growth bucket could be used for extravagance. It could be used for gifting. It could be used for inheritance. It could be used for whatever other goals that the family has. It could be used for protection, long-term care strategies, whatever it is that people have that concern of. But it's important to have purpose around your assets. And that's what I see the most, is most folks come in, done a great job saving, and they just haven't built purpose around, what they've created. They've done a great job getting to where they are. It's up to us and our team and our planners to put purpose around everything. So then they know that they're going to be okay.
Well, that's thank you. So thank you so much. I mean, let me just sort of take this full circle and kind of wrap up, right? So we began the podcast by asking the question that we often get, which is, how much do I need to retire? How much do I need to save in retirement or for retirement? And in our opinion, you're asking the wrong question. That's not the question. The question is, how much do you spend in retirement, and what's the difference? What is the income gap between your guaranteed sources of income, such as Social Security, pensions, annuities, and that spending goal? So to repeat, it's not about how much you've saved, it's more about how much you spend. And I love how you talked about the idea of the planning process of what we do is that the results are different from everybody. Yeah. In the sense that everyone has a unique situation. Everyone has unique goals. Everyone has unique values, or not say unique values, but they have goals that are very specific to themselves and their families, their own health situation, their own parent situation. Like if they had parents that passed away at age 50 and they're 60 right now, they might want to really live life up to the absolute fullest. Every family has different legacy goals. Obviously, again, that their health is going to be an impact, as I mentioned. But the process, even though everyone's different, the process is the same, which is to not necessarily to identify how much you have saved, but step one is to make sure that let's find out how much you spend, and then let's see if your savings can support that. Now, if you want, and then through various stress tests, like Keith had mentioned earlier, like what about a healthcare scare? What about taxes going up? What about a bear market, et cetera? And so at the end of the day, we can answer that question. We just had to start with the first and the most important question first, is which is what you spend. And then through the planning process, we can tell you whether or not you have saved. We can say whether or not that number is the right number for you afterwards. And during that process, we're able to provide people comfort, confidence, knowing that they've worked it through the machine, if you will. They've done all the due diligence. They've done all the number crunching. So when they eventually make that leap, when they eventually retire, when they move on to the next chapter of their lives, which has been a long chapter, because for a lot of our clients, they started working when they were 14, 15 years old, and now they're on to that new stage. Now, ideally, we can help them find some purpose in life. So whatever that may be, charity, family, travel, hobbies, whatever that may be. We're also going to find them purpose to their investments. So each investment has a specific goal, and then showing them the big picture knows that they have confidence to achieve those goals, their personal goals in retirement, while we help making sure that they're achieving their financial goals with their assets. Thank you so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it, and we'll catch you the next time.
Thanks for listening to the Retirement Roadmap podcast by SHP Financial. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so future episodes are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you've liked what you heard, please share the show. Create your own little ripples so we can help even more people with their retirement goals. If you want access to all past interviews, including notes, resources, and exclusive content from SHP Financial, visit shpfinancial.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining us on the Retirement Roadmap podcast. And for all the attorneys out there, and disclaimers and disclosures, I'm just going to put on my super serious voice and add our own. No statements made during the Retirement Roadmap podcast shall constitute tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own legal or tax professional on any such matters. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Our investment advisory services are offered through SHP Wealth Management, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance sales are offered through SHP Financial, LLC. Our advisors and insurance reps may offer clients advice and/or products from each entity. No client is under any obligation to purchase any insurance product.